From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, a show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok.
And I'm Jennifer Landa.
And this episode is one of our breaking news from a long time ago episodes. What news could be possibly breaking? This is more like dripping news from a long time ago this week. We've got some fun little quotes from many different people involved in upcoming and past Star Wars shows, but they are actually little interesting tidbits to me that lead us off, I think, into some interesting discussion points. I can't wait to hear what Ken and Jennifer have to think about it. But we want to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. We're continuing to recommend Rebel Rising by Beth Revis. This is one of our favorites here. We've been shouting from the rooftops about this one for years now. I think it's one that's kind of gone under the radar a little bit, but it is a great companion to Rogue One, which seems great as people get really hyped for Andor Season 2. So to download your free audiobook today, you can go to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. One more time, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audio book. And with that, we move on to the asks. Ken?
That's right. We're asking a couple things here. Hey, you watch on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. Do a dance. Celebrate to the world that you're subscribing to ForceCenter on YouTube. But more importantly, we're focusing on Patreon this week at patreon.com/ForceCenter. You can go there, support us, and we're trying to get over 400 paid subscribers. Helps keep the show going in a way you don't even fully understand. From there, you get into our Discord where Jennifer Landa doing the little Ewok dance.
I will what? I will do an Ewok dance?
You do an Ewok dance in Discord.
This is true. I think I'm in real life. I'm like, is this going to be part of a live stream?
It could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
That was a very good pitch because we got Jennifer dancing and you got me wondering, like, wait a minute, how else does it help us? What's going on? What am I forgetting?
It's the foundational support of the show.
It is. Yeah, you're right. It is absolutely the pillars, and it would be great to get back up to 400 paid subscribers. And one of these days, we will figure out what we'll do when we get to 400 paid subscribers. Because that always works better. We'll get to this, and then X will happen. Speaking of X happening, let's talk about life adventures. Jennifer, did you have any life adventures, and did Star Wars find its way into them this week?
It always does. And I was thinking about this. Okay, so I've become obsessed with Blythe dolls. I don't know if you guys know what Blythe dolls are. Probably not. Anyways, it's like these dolls. But there are a lot of miniatures. There's a lot of miniatures involved. And there's a huge collecting community that I've stumbled upon. And us collectors find each other. And so I'm obsessed. I want to get a Blythe doll. I'm going to create a diorama of her little crafting room, library, whatever. So I started finding Star Wars clothing for her. I found the cutest little Star Wars pencil cup that she can put on her desk. It's a stormtrooper head. And I was like, this is amazing. I can basically be a miniature version of myself. I can make her a Death Star costume, which I want to do. Like, what is going on? I'm having a midlife crisis. But I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with these miniatures, and it's a way for me to also connect with my kids because they're really into miniatures and like these make it mini toys.
These look like horror characters.
Oh my!
Okay, there are some creepy ones. There are, I will admit, but some people kind of make them scary. But then you can also make like a miniature version of yourself, which I'm really fascinated by.
Jen, I hate to be the one to say this to you. These are haunted.
No, that's kind of the appeal. I'm going to get a clown one, too. I want to get a clown one.
These are scary.
What? Almost all of them, I mean, huge eyes, understandable for dolls.
Yeah.
These are particularly huge eyes. And when I pulled up Blythe dolls into images, almost all of them are looking over their shoulder, which makes them look extra haunted.
Right?
Yeah, like, what's behind me? You're like, is the beast coming? I've summoned the clown. Is he arrived to kill you yet?
No, it's people customize them because like the actual dolls are just very like you can't really pose them as much, but people customize them and charge insane amounts, like thousands of dollars, which obviously I can't do. But I found some on AliExpress for very cheap. I'm going to customize it my own way. pose it.
Look at
This
this.
is going to be
Top 10 DIY Blythe doll clothes. Where's your video on that, Jen? Where's your
Look at
video
this.
on that?
Look at this haunted influencer, Ken.
That one's the makeup is a little overdone in my opinion.
I'm not really here.
Oh my gosh, I've discovered
I have
the Reddit.
100K followers.
Yeah, I
Oh
love
my
it.
gosh,
It's
but
just
you
amazing.
guys,
Oh my
it's
God.
amazing. It's amazing what people can do, and that there's a whole community. Whereas, like, I would have been ashamed. And part of me, I'm not ashamed, but
No,
you
don't
know,
be
like,
ashamed.
this
No.
is like, so people collect action figures. Men collect action figures. Well, people, not
Yeah.
just men. But my point
Yeah.
is that like that seen as acceptable, but like dolls are not seen as acceptable. So I feel like the tide is changing, and I'm going to
Yeah.
be a part of it. And I'm going to flaunt my little mini me Blythe doll, and she'll be here in her little
Yeah.
Star Wars
Yeah.
library.
This is great.
I can't wait to just have her eyes bore into us every episode.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
know. I'll have her working on something so she's not looking directly at camera.
That'd be fine. I think it's great. I'm a little biased being an action figure collector, but yeah, the whole thing is they're not just toys; they are collectibles, and they are ways. I mean, to the idea of getting one to make a mini version of yourself, that's like a way to process your own identity, right? Of like,
Yeah.
well, how am I going to dress her? What is her, atmosphere and ambiance and look going to be? It's a way to think about yourself. It's a self-portrait in a doll form.
Right. And I can decorate the living room the way that I want it without spending, money to buy new furniture, which I don't have. But I can buy like, cheap miniatures from Michael's or whatever. Like that. For $8, I can get a new couch.
We're gonna get to ForceCenter at some point.
Sorry,
but
guys.
how tall are these? Because there's one I'm looking at now. She's got ripped jeans and Converse that are more detailed than like my Converse.
Yes,
Like,
there's 3 different sizes. There's like 11 and a half inch, 30 centimeters. There's also a midi size, a midi Blythe, which is like this size.
Sure.
And then there's a petite Blythe, which is quite small. So I want to get all eventually. This is my new collecting thing.
Sure.
Yeah, no, there are a lot of great custom ones. I like this.
Oh
this,
no.
Wait,
this one-eyed one
yeah.
who's holding an eyeball. Beautiful, beautiful.
There's
beautiful.
elves, there's vampires. Oh,
Vampires. I'm
oh
in.
yeah, I
I'm all
want
the
a
way
vampire. Yeah, but those are customized.
Well, okay.
in. Okay, I'm not going
Okay,
to
sorry.
customize a vampire.
Wow.
Ken, did you have
Dear
adventures, and do they involve anything small and creepy?
No. Stop going there. Don't go there. Don't go there. Yeah, no. Yeah, no. Jen, I want you to become the world's leading Blythe fluencer right away.
There's a
No,
lot
I
of them.
did not. I did not. Good week that began performing on your birthday show, and I'm going to let you tell the whole story there, but that was a lot of fun. It was a great feel. Good warm audience. We got to see some of our friends in Discord. Brian Tiller, who's also does work with me on the Moon Agers. We had Johnny Starlight, 8984M, Kyrie Brady, who took like 9 buses to get there in LA. It was wonderful.
Yeah. It was a fun conversation. I was like, I don't mean to. I'm not your dad, but can you like post on Blue Sky when you get home? That's a long bus ride.
He did post. He posted Discord or something. I'm home safe. And then our friend Nikki Kumar from Imperial Senate podcast was there as well. It was fun to hang out with them after the show as always. But as they watched me devour a cookie for my post-show meal that last Friday night, but it was great. A lot of fun. Kudos to you for just all of it, sir. It was a great show. And I know you used to do those shows more regularly, and I told you there, I'll say now, like I get why you would move on to some other things and career-wise, and those shows don't always generate money, and that's part of what we're here for. And all this. It was such a warm, wonderful show, and I know your birthday was at the center of it. But even when you didn't celebrate your birthday on those shows, they were warm, wonderful, and different kind of comedy variety shows. So it was really fun, really refreshing after 5 days in Little Rock. So I needed it. So it was good. It reestablished some confidence in me as a performer.
Oh, good. Good.
So there you go. That was it. That was my adventure. Other than that, just working all weekend. Getting ready to perform next weekend in San Francisco. For those who I'll drop some information at the end of the show. But yeah, all you this weekend, sir. How was it?
Yeah, it was a wonderful birthday, and I'm really glad I decided to do the show. Because I always love doing a great show, and then the day after where you're like, I'm a little sore and I can relax because I did something. Yeah, I love doing the comedy variety shows. I always try to book people who are like fun and positive, and often their material can have a little bit of edge, a little bit of like I'm coping with life, but it's not ever like just somebody who's like I hate everyone and everything. Come to my depression, anger party. So the shows are a ton of fun to do. They're also just like a ton of work to put on. But this one worked out really, really well. Great audience in the house, and so this is the first time I live streamed a show of my own, and really a lot of people tuned into the live stream from it was a This Is Your Life from the internet. Old friends in Minneapolis, so many ForceCenter friends. My dad had a friend over and had some pizza and beer, and it was for my dad it was a little bit of a this is my son's life. It's like, oh, so that's that laser person you've been talking about forever. And that guy who was yelling about Uncle Owen, that's the guy you did the podcast with, right? Like, yeah. But Ken crushed it. Ken did an amazing job. Really, really great. You've always been funny, but it was so good to see you feeling like you are being your full and true self on stage, which is what it felt like.
It's only taken 25 years, and that's the important lesson here, kids. Never give up. Never turn around.
Always working towards it. Always working towards it. Yeah. So then, for the rest of the adventure, a big part of this was I keep saying it's a big birthday. I won't do the whole bit. I got a whole bit in the stand-up show, but I got good advice when I came to Los Angeles 10 years ago. Do not tell people your age. And I had some very negative experiences when I tried to be honest about my age because people are weird about your age. And then I started doing ForceCenter and other pop culture stuff where it's kind of hard not to tip your hand at your age when you're like, I was alive when Empire Strikes Back came out. And people are like, ooh, so not 30. Got it. But I still, even on ForceCenter, it's obvious how old I am here on ForceCenter, but I've still been gun shy about just saying it out loud, and is a part of my birthday gift to myself. I'm not doing that anymore. I don't want to work with anybody who's going to say I don't want to work with you because of how old you are. If that's your thing, then bleep off. So I posted. I said it in the show. Posted it on social media. So I'll finish the trifecta of saying this was my 50th bleeping birthday, and I'll be happy to be more honest and direct about my age going forward here on ForceCenter. And Jennifer, one of the things I did on my actual 50th birthday is go to a toy store and buy myself a Luke Skywalker.
See,
you are not alone.
Redefining what fit. Yep. I mean, really, right? Like, I feel like now we're seeing so many different sides to being 50, 60, 70, even 80 years old. I love it. We're not being confined anymore by expectations.
Yeah. One of Sarah's relatives, my wife's relatives I met over Christmas, is 94 years old, and he's going really strong. We played pool on Christmas, and I was teaching my nieces and nephews how to play pool. And I was like, hey, it's been a long time since I played pool. It's about 15 years. And this 94-year-old man thought about it for a while. I was like, it's about 72 years for me since I last played pool. And then kicked everyone's ass at pool at 94. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to feel old at 50, damn it.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. And it was a weird Luke Skywalker. He comes with a bone because he's going to fight a Rancor. I got bone Luke Skywalker for my birthday. Yeah. All right. A little bit longer life adventure there, but we are going to move on to discussing our breaking news, our dripping news of a lot of fun quotes on upcoming projects. Very much cherry picking. These interviews had lots of stuff going on, but I wanted to grab the things that I thought were interesting to discuss. Starting with a Jude Law interview with Rotten Tomatoes TV. Jude Law had this quote in response to being asked about the character he's playing. He said, "So I play a character called Jod. Well, that's one of his names. He is someone they meet and who is there to try and help them back to their home planet. And you never quite know whether he's trustworthy, whether he isn't trustworthy, whether he's with one side or another. You never quite know. But ultimately, he's a part of the crew. Some want him a part of it. Some don't want him a part of it. I can't give too much away." I'm going to say he's full of contradictions. I think that was a decent amount from Jude Law. Jennifer, how do you feel about this? Does this answer the mystery of the weird, fun name, Jod Na Nawood? Do you think his other names will be more regular or weirder, cooler? Blaze
I think
Blade Swinger.
right. No, I think it's gonna actually be boring, like
Mm.
Bob or something. More typical
Mhm,
for our
mhm.
world. But yeah, the fact that he also calls himself Jod, because that was a question. We were like, do we call him Jod Na? Is he,
Mhm,
Mm.
just Jod? So now we know he's just Jod. And I
mm.
bet you most of the characters will probably not be calling him Jod Na
Yeah.
Nawood. Right?
I'm
It's just
Mhm.
so
just Jod.
musical.
Mhm, mhm,
Jod Na Nawood. So, but
mhm.
yeah, now it makes sense to why his name is so unique. And I want to know the origins. How did he come across? How did he come up with his name? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. I wonder if there is an element of like the character in Star Wars is poking fun at Star Wars names. If
Mm.
this is not his real name, but a name
Mm.
he's using. Ken, how do you feel about the reveal that Jod Na Nawood is only one of his names?
I'm intrigued. I do like. I've been saying Jod Na Nawood over and over since we first learned it, and I think it's great. I think it's wonderful in a sense of in a Star Wars name, right? It's just that ultimate example of it, fun and all. But I love what he's saying here. I like where this journey starts about him trying to help. So if he's got some different names, and he's trying to also hide, trying to run while he's also trying to help. He's gonna need some monikers there. I'm on board. I'm on board for the mystery of the name.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it because I really thought it was like that is such a big swing,
Hmm.
but it makes sense to me if Jod Na Nawood is the name he's using when he first meets the kids. So therefore, it's the first name that the audience hears. That's what
Hmm.
they're leading with, and
Hmm.
if he is force sensitive or not force sensitive or just a trickster, whatever the deal is with that skeleton key moving in what looks
Mm.
like kind of their initial meeting
Yeah.
between him and the kids if it would be great if Jod Na Nawood is his pretending to be a Jedi name.
Yeah.
And that's what he's
Yeah.
like reading up on the history of the Jedi. Like, Kiadi Mundi.
Yeah.
Okay, my name's Jod Na Nawood then, if that's a Jedi name. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah.
It would be. How would you both feel, Ken? How would you feel if he had layers of names that all had a little bit of a maybe meta element where that's his Jedi name. Now he's got a scoundrel name. Now he's got a
Mm.
boring name like Tim Carlo.
And the socks to match.
Yeah.
There's something about that I would like. I wouldn't have thought about that on my own. I don't know if it's something I would have wanted, but again, we're going to mention this a lot. This is for kids out in the galaxy learning the ultimate lessons. This is a morality tale at its core, wrapped up in Amblin wrapping paper. There's something that's nice about this guy going, let me give you lessons on every genre. Let me try to get you through this there. And if he's a trickster who, you said meta, I know you're not suggesting fourth wall breaking, but just for us, the audience, just knowing that we've lived with this for 40 plus years in general. Again, I know different generations jump on, but that him just having fun with the naming conventions, being this kind of false and tricksy guy, I'd like that.
Yeah. Jennifer, how would you feel about that if Jod Na Nawood is his sort of Jedi name, but then he's got like a Dash Rendar kind of name as well?
I love that. It reminds me of the movie The Saint with Val Kilmer, and maybe I'm
Mm.
remembering it wrong, where like he's
Mm,
slipping into different characters and he has a name that's appropriate for each
mm,
character. I kind of like that for Jude Law to see him in that type of a role where he shapeshifts. And it makes sense, right? Because in our world, like we would associate a certain type of person with a certain type of name. So that's
Hmm.
a very common thing. So it makes sense it would happen in Star Wars.
Yeah, so maybe not even meta, just like a guy looking around. Like these are the kind of
mm,
different names that are associated with different kinds of people.
Right.
mm,
Depending on how I
mm,
want to present myself is really cool.
mm,
So wanted to focus on the name thing because I'm just delighted by it, and that's a fun reveal from Jude Law.
mhm,
But also want to touch on the bigger idea of the confirmation that he's going to be shifting identities a lot. That there's a question of whether he's trustworthy. And this idea of Ken, how would you feel if the character ended up in Enigma? That he goes on a journey with the kids, and the kids have to decide to trust him or not, and
mhm.
he ends up stepping up, which I would assume he does. I don't think this is going to end with him not getting the kids home.
Right.
They're like, well, cautionary tale: don't trust adults, never trust
Yeah.
Jude Law. I think it'll probably end happy. but that's no guarantee that we'll figure out truly who he is. How would you feel if he ended up in Enigma, that we didn't know what his true name is and what his true past is?
Man, could you imagine the Wikipedia page blankness there that we'd have to deal with? Yeah, because here's where I'm kind of leaning right now, and this is I'm definitely influenced by my weekend was spent rewatching Rings of Power as I get ready for season 2, a show I enjoyed. I found it was warm, full of joy and hope, while also being a lesson. One of the key things in the Rings of Power season 1 is how do you know the difference between light and dark, and there's some simple kind of light looks up, dark looks down. They use the example of a rock sinking and a boat floating. But at the end of the day, the big lesson is sometimes you don't know until you touch the darkness. And I think the kids out and about in the galaxy learning this big, hey, George says this is for 12-year-olds lesson. Ding, 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 ring a bell anytime a Star Wars podcaster mentions that now with the show, George and the 12-year-olds. But I think it's going to be very key. And so if you got a character who is presenting many different kind of versions of himself, and you never really know the truth, it's only in his actions. It's only you having to trust him, even if maybe you feel you shouldn't. And maybe there are some lessons. I agree with you. I don't think it ends in a dark lesson here. I don't think the kids are like, we're never home. And we flash forward to like 40 years later, they emerge. I think we'll have a happy ending, but that's got to be part of the journey for me. And I love that this guy, it's fun. Is he a Jedi? Is he not? Is he a smuggler? Is this? We're having those questions. For the kids, that's going to be a dangerous question they have to answer. And I think it'll be a fun mythic journey on the way forward with him.
Yeah. Jennifer, how do you feel about who he will actually be, and how you'd feel if we didn't truly know by the end?
I think because he's a new character, I'm okay with it being an enigma. I feel like there's always this need for me personally to be like, who is this character? How do they fit in the overall timeline? Do we know their parents? Like, I mean, honestly, it's like the family tree, right? So to not know it is kind of nice. It's okay. And it also leaves a room for more storytelling, either in season 2 or in books, right? They don't have to box themselves in just yet. So let's leave them an enigma, and the Wikipedia page just blank.
Yeah, there's so much in here that's interesting to me. I think I love what this description of his character tells us about the kids, because we were all discussing, I think on our last news show, about that great coming of age story told from the perspective of 4 different kids who have different attitudes towards this, exciting and scary journey. And it does seem like Wim is set up to be like wanting to believe in Jod Na Nawood, wanting to believe in the Jedi, and it'd be great. It's great to know that maybe some of the other kids are like, nah, you can't trust him. He's a faker. I saw the magnet in his sleeve, all that kind of thing. That makes me feel like, okay, we're talking so much about Jude Law because he's Jude Law. He's the name that's anchoring the show. But I think so much of the show is going to be the kids trying to decide whether or not to trust this sketchy adult. Tells us a lot about optimism versus realism and finding the balance in real life. And I think it's interesting to think, is this character going to be kind of a metaphor for kids dealing with the larger world? It's easy to just learn the lesson. Don't trust anything or anybody. But then that shuts you off to experiences, to hope, to the possibility that people can be better, the possibility that people can change. Can we trust how adults present on the surface, or do we need to listen to our instincts about what's true? All that stuff is really interesting to me from the perspective of the kids. As well as Jude Law's character. Yeah.
No, I like what you're saying there. And it's something, there's something with Jude Law, who is, I think, generally a charismatic performer. I don't know if he's everyone's favorite, so I've enjoyed his work over the years. But, it's just, you want to trust him, right? Just even, I want to trust Jude Law in real life. I don't even know if I should. So he's a perfect choice for me right now to play that character.
Yeah, and I think you're going to be rooting for him. I'm like, come on, help the kids. And I think he is going to help the kids, and I think he is going to step up. But final thing for me is I think we always try to ask the why as well. And if Jude Law's character is hiding his past, is telling lots of different versions of himself, or is just sort of, hey, when I go to this planet, it's best for me to pretend to be a Jedi. When I go to this planet, it's best for me to pretend to be a pirate scoundrel. The why of that is somebody who is trying to survive and protecting themselves and scared to let people see their true selves, which makes it for an interesting digging into who is this person really, probably going to be defined by his actions. I think we'll find out who he is based on his actions. But I love this idea that we can be like, well, was he in the Jedi Order? Or did he get kicked out? Was he almost killed? We don't know. He said that, but we don't know if we can believe that. We just have to trust him based on his actions. Is fascinating. Torture to Wikipedia editors, yes, but fascinating for me as an audience member.
Yeah, I like that idea.
All right, moving on. In a separate interview with Entertainment Weekly, Jude Law was asked about the over 25-year-old debate of who shot first, Han or Greedo. Did they fire at the same time? Jude Law responded, Han killed him, cold blood, and that was the way it was always meant to be. Jennifer, how do you feel about Jude Law's very direct, very Gen X take on Han shot first?
I mean, it's what we all thought. It's what we all believed for years, right? It's more authentic to the character. I feel like it's a little bit silly to think that he didn't shoot first, and the reasoning behind why George changed it. It's like, come on, just let him be a scoundrel, a smuggler, and he can still be a hero, right? I don't care that he shot first.
And do you like Jude Law being direct?
Yeah.
And honest and open about it, or do you think he should have been like, well, there's a lot of different ways to look at it?
That's what happens when you get older. You just stop caring, It's like, it's like, this is what I believe. Take it or leave it. And yes, I am in a Star Wars show.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. Ken, how do you feel about Jude Law's very direct response to this question?
I love it. Yeah, I love it. You called it a Gen X response. It is very much. Didn't we all solve this in '97? It sucked. It sucked. This was right. There's been ongoing discussion about this. It's the McClunky of it all. I get it. Look, and for me, I've always been like, I fine with him shooting first, and I understood George's reasonings. I think you could explore it. I think it's explored the best in Solo: A Star Wars Story, where you see why Han makes that decision with Tobias Beckett beyond just, hey, I'm one step ahead and people are predictable, but just like, this is a survival thing. This is what I have to do as the bad guy in this land. I've got to shoot first. And he walks into the cantina with that in his mind. It's a lesson learned. It's who he is. It's the way he feels he has to be in this galaxy. So I like exploring it in that way. I feel like I'm at a party with Jude Law. This is one of those party conversations where someone hears like, "Oh, you like Star Wars? Oh man, I stopped watching after Han shot second. I stopped. And I get it. It's not necessarily one of my favorite changes. And I do own a Han shot first shirt that I have to dig out. I don't even know if it's still in one piece, but I bought it back in the day. So I totally get it. I'm with you, Jen, too. It worked for me then. Still works for me now. But I just love that it seems like Jude does not know what forest he wandered into by saying that.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, to me, it's always worked in the original version because Greedo's very. It's not like Han's just walking through the canteen. It's like, there's that Greedo a-hole, and pops him in the back of the head. Greedo very clearly says, I am going to shoot you right now, right? But I also feel for George Lucas, like, he was in a different place. He, gets older. He has this family. It's really important for him that these films are for 12-year-olds, and that feels too brutal to him. Fair enough. It's his thing. And then, I mean, if we were taking a vote, it'd be like, it was fine the way it was in the original version. But I'm also just kind of at this point, I kind of the heat on that debate has long been surpassed by other worse controversies in the Star Wars community. I'm just kind of entertained by the number of times that it's been tweaked, all the way up to like the last time bomb that Lucas left to go off when Disney put A New Hope on Disney Plus, and it had the McClunky, and and there's all those rage tweets about like, what did Disney do? And like, that's the way George gave it to us. His last gift, a mystery McClunky, just like we just put up the version George gave us, and he messed with that scene again and added a McClunky that has no translation. I love it. I love it. I love Jude Law just being like, I'm going to have fun with this. I'm going to be blunt and direct. Which brings me to the final thing I wanted to discuss. so there are bits across all these interviews that he gave in the last week or so that make it really clear that Jude Law loved the original trilogy as a kid. But in a way that I would describe as a humorous and charming, really struggles to answer when Skeleton Crew happens in the Star Wars timeline. There's an interview he's doing with someone who had a very small role with him in the movie The Holiday, which has had a resurgence. So he's got a good camaraderie with her, and she's like, "So when does this one happen?" And he's like, "In the timeline," and he's like, "Oh," and he's trying to get it right. And he's like, "The Empire has been defeated, but later on the Order rises." There's a 30-year period, and it's in there, like, and he knows that he's struggling with it, and is having a real sense of humor about it, which. But he speaks eloquently other places about how much the original trilogy blew his mind. Which leads me to this question, Ken. How do you feel about an actor explicitly having that relationship to Star Wars where, like, look, I think Han shot first, but I could not tell you that Greedo is a Rodian, and I don't know that he used to have a cousin named Beto, but I can tell you how Star Wars, the original trilogy, made me feel when I was a kid and I went on with life. Kind of awe over lore, maybe. How do you feel about that?
I actually, quite frankly, love that because in a weird way, that's where I'm at. Like I just we have the trivia knowledge baked into us, and yeah, I do feel I know a lot about Star Wars just in terms of lists and timelines and all that. But I gotta admit, I know where Skeleton Crew is, I know where Mando is, I know where it all is. But when you look at it, like in a passing sense, just kind of go like 5 years after. I know we got snow troopers, we got stormtroopers. I gotta sometimes place on the map. And so as I get older, Jen, you talk about you get older, you don't care. As I get older, I'm less and less worried about knowing every little bit of knowledge and just soaking it in and being there for what's at the center of these stories, these magical myths that inspire us. Lord, second time I mentioned Rings of Power, but also just Lord of the Rings, the films, the Jackson films are three of my favorite things ever, as it is for a lot of folks. I couldn't tell you half the things in that film in terms of locations, maps. Who's that name? Like I've never in 20 plus years taken the time to worry about that. I just the feelings wash over me. And those I couldn't do Lord of the Rings Center. I don't understand it on a small granular level like I do Star Wars. And so to hear Jude Law, I'm right there with him in a way. Yes, I know more. Yes, I know about Beezer Fortuna, right? I'll never forget Beezer. But I just like that he's here for what got him through parts of his childhood then, if that's what inspired him on any level. I like that. I like that energy.
Yeah. I think that for me, I like someone being out front about, I do know Star Wars. I know how it made me feel when I was a child, especially in that, the Skeleton Crew is a show for all ages, but it is about 12-year-olds discovering wonder. So, like, that is the most important thing to me, is like, I know how I felt as a child seeing Star Wars, and I know that's kind of the mission on this one, is for me to help other people feel that wonder that I felt. I think it is great. And I think, there was kerfluffle, maybe a bad faith kerfluffle about one of the actors in Acolyte misspeaking about a character name and all that. And that, I think that's part of the reason I want to bring this up, is because it flares up in the discourse from time to time of, well, they don't even know the lineage of the Darksaber. Well, then they shouldn't be playing that character, blah, 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 or that creator doesn't have the, and I think for me, there are different levels of relationships to have with Star Wars. And I love knowing Greedo is a Rodian. I don't want to be obsessed with needing to know everything, and I don't want my actors to need to know everything.
Right.
I'm a 50-year-old man who happily bought a Luke Skywalker action figure on my birthday, and I'm happy to tell everyone that. But I'm also happy for Jude Law to be like, yeah, I think I had one Chewbacca, and I can't remember what happened to him. Yeah. And I'll just be weirded out if there's an action figure of me. That's fine, too. Jennifer, how do you feel about Jude Law's relationship to Star Wars and the way he's communicating it in these interviews?
I think he is a professional actor. And we have to remember, like, if you go to an audiologist, I'm going to expect them to know everything about the ear and how the ear works. I'm not going to go to the audiologist and ask about my intestines, right? Or
Right.
my different problems, digestive problems. So when you go to Jude Law, he should know his character. He needs to know kind of like the themes as we talk about in the show and the other characters, and maybe like an understanding of what's happening in this time in the galaxy. But I'm not going to expect him to know species and creatures and have Excel spreadsheets on these things. That's what we do as fans. That's not his job. And if he was spending so much time doing all that stuff, I'd actually be a little bit concerned and be like, bro, focus on your lines and learning, that kind of stuff. I would not expect him to know all these other timelines and things. And quite frankly, as we get older, speaking of getting older, names and those kinds of things, they go out the window. So, that's what I've been learning. And even for myself, I'm like, I can only remember certain things. I got to write it down. And with a timeline, unless it's on my wall, I'm not going to remember. I'm going to be like, oh, okay, snowtroopers. I kind of know the general vicinity of when this is happening. But yeah. Poor Jude Law. But I appreciate that he's trying for us fans. You're Jude Law. You don't need to worry about that.
I mean, he had to know when he signed up, right? Of like, you are going to carry the publicity of this show entirely on your back with a few quotes every once in a while from showrunners or directors. But, we're not throwing those kids out there. This is all you, man. So he must be like, all right, I'm up for it. And so far, just charming and honest. And in terms of like creativity and acting, there's a world of difference between him being on set and knowing like, okay, this is an unsure time in the galaxy. The Empire has fallen, but there's still remnants. People are scared and frightened, and it's a fragile time in the galaxy. Is different than, let me show you exactly on the timeline. and I know off the top of my head exactly how many years since Order 66. Like, actors don't need to answer a trivia contest. They need to know the feelings and the vibe.
I don't take people seriously when they get all into that. You know what I mean? The Charlie Barnett thing you're mentioning here, obviously it was weaponized by a certain section of commentators out there in the space, but it's just like, and everyone goes to the example of Harrison Ford, which is a wonderful example. You should go to it over and over and over again of someone who's like, I don't care about any of this. That's the director's job. That's the editor. That's the producers. When I'm shooting a short film with Joseph Scrimshaw, I just know I got to be in this scene. He's got to be the one that knows where the Cthulhu monster shows up and where I need to know about here. This is here. This is the job. It's here. It's wonderful if people are fans of it. I remember in 2014, there were some folks I knew who were doing the interviews with Star Wars Rebels cast. And Ezra, Taylor Gray, right? It's been so long. See? Names,
Taylor
Jen.
Gray.
Names.
Yeah,
Taylor.
yeah.
Someone came back and was like, it's kind of a bummer. He's not really a Star Wars fan. And I remember thinking, oh, that's a bummer. Like, but why? Then I've changed my tune on it. Like, why? Why? It's a job, man. Do the job well. Do the job well. The rest will come. And I just don't take we're having a conversation, but when it came up around Charlie Barnett, it's like, who cares? Who cares? He clearly was tried and said this and said that. How many times have we misspoke? So anyways, not to get grumpy on it. It's just like, I think Jude Law's doing great. Again, it's Jude Law, man. Jude Law's in Star Wars.
And I would suggest, tracking down some of these interviews, not for like, ooh, what are the hints? What are the clues? He's really charming and really game. And I think, it's a hard job for actors to do all of these press events again and again. And I think he's kind of doing a masterclass of how to be honest and charming and funny and do the job. So it's a treat.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to be back to talk more news, this time about Andor in one. Yes, that's right. Only one quote about the Mandalorian and Grogu. Back in a moment. And we have returned to continue our discussion of breaking news. There's a lot of different little interview bursts after D23, and this one is from Diego Luna. He had some fun discussion of K-2SO and the impact of Andor Season 2 on Rogue One. This is a quote. In response to a question from Entertainment Weekly, Diego Luna said, "You're going to see why K2 is so important in Rogue One, and how does he get to be such an important character for the rebellion? I think people watching Rogue One after watching season 2 are going to see a different film. Everything will be signified differently, knowing what had to happen for K2 to be there. It's going to make you witness the journey of Rogue One in a different way, I think, and not just with K2, but with many other characters. I think it'll be really cool. I think it'll be really cool too, Diego Luna. Jennifer, does this make you feel like Andor meeting K-2SO will possibly even be like the focus of one of these 3-episode arcs, as opposed to just like a side or smaller part of the quest or the mission?
It is possible. And I don't know how I feel about it just yet, because what I enjoyed so much about Andor was the newness of it. I loved the newness of B2EMO and all these other characters. I personally don't need that much of it, but I'll leave it up to them because they are the creators, and I'm sure that they have a great story and tale. I'm not going to be like, no, you shouldn't include K-2SO. But
Yeah.
I don't really have any feelings towards it.
Yeah. Where are you at with K-2SO? He's such a beloved droid. Is he one of your favorites, or can you take him or leave him? Where are you at?
I'm more of a K2SO. Maybe no, not my. I mean, I like the character.
Right.
I love the performance. But I love B2EMO, and I love the little cutesy things.
He's a different kind of droid because he has there's a little bit more of that sort of snark than the warmth of R2 and poor sad little B2EMO and his little doggy charging bed. The heart of Andor is B2EMO. Ken, how would you feel if it is if K-2SO is a bigger deal than just like, and here's how I met my pal along the way, but rather here's the focus. This is a big deal.
I'm intrigued by that for one big reason. This is going to be a point of debate. We'll see where the debate goes. Speaking of online conversations, I'm reading this quote and thinking, oh, they're going to change how he met from what it was in the comics, which was a one-shot issue, 2016-ish, early 2017 at maybe the latest. That, quite frankly, I don't even really remember the details of it too much. I think you could build around it. Maybe you could do like what Dave's done in the past. Let me just take this, and it's kind of the same story but different. But this show tells me that possibly they're going to spend some time with it. That it will have some weight behind it. That he didn't just and not. I want to make sure not that the comic didn't have some weight. There was authors and artists behind it. I don't want to talk bad about it, but like, this will have some greater purpose. And I do like K2, and I do like what Alan Tudyk did with it. I think it's got some great moments. It was in a weird period of time where like every BB-8, all the new droids, we all had a new Phoebe Waller-Bridge as L3, all the stuff like they all kind of have. We got to have that droid, and I agree with Jen too. B2EMO was a different version of that for me, and I like B2 a lot. I'm curious about B2, but anyways, to just zero in and finish up my answer, Joseph. Like, yeah, I don't think it needs to be all 3 episodes, right? But that it has some weight and merit beyond just, I have a droid now.
Yeah, I think I'm really intrigued by it because I think I was thinking of it like, well, how do you tell the story without including K-2SO along the way? They seem so bonded in Rogue One, and there's a history there. I'm kind of excited about, well, what if it's utterly vital and a big deal of like the only way the rebellion can get this vital information or to get into this place is to steal and reprogram this Imperial security droid. I think if it's a larger purpose and there's more hanging on it, it kind of moves the story out of checking a box of how did these things happen, which I think fans, and I can agree with this, of sometimes it can get to be like, it feels like we're checking a box. We know this happened to the character, so we kind of have to show it. And to me, that might be a more novel approach if it's like not he's on a mission and our energy is all focused over here. And then, as a side thing, he also met K2 and it's no big deal. It makes it an entirely different vibe and feeling and adds more weight to K-2SO if getting and turning K2 is the mission. I also feel like there's a lot of great comedy with K-2SO and Rogue One, and as people have talked about with the K-2SO one's death, there's also some like weight and gravitas to K-2SO, and I think part of that is their bond. That it's all comedy, but K-2SO seems truly concerned about trusting Jen and giving Jyn a blaster and all that kind of thing. And I feel like maybe that's some of the beats that Diego Luna is talking about feeling differently about of in a Andor television show brutal kind of way. If Cassian and K-2SO really go through some bleep together, maybe even Cassian is horribly wounded, and K-2SO is like, do you want that to happen again? You remember what I had to do to get you out? I think all that could be really interesting.
Yeah, you reminded me of the death of K-2SO has long been one of my favorites. We've discussed it here, the whole journey of his choice over programming, and remixing a nearly 10-year take here from ForceCenter, 2016, so long ago. But I just remember we discussed back then of like when K2 dies, the lights go out. It's like, oh, this movie might be doing that. Like they're doing that. And it was a great choice to be the first death to me. And then we have been connected. And if you can even add more to that, and like what you're suggesting with like K2 saves him first or something like that, we're gonna talk about the recontextualization of this movie, but like, yeah, just thinking about that death, and now you get to see the start of that. Curious, interested.
Yeah, add some more weight to it. And then there is is there any sort of connection to B2 Emo? Is there any amount of B2 Emo's programming in K2SO, which I think would make people look at it differently? Jennifer's a big B2 Emo fan. How would you feel if there was more of a direct connection between him and K2SO?
I think that'd be nice. Yeah. And the more that you guys are talking about it, the more I am looking forward to it. It makes me want to rewatch Rogue One because I have not seen that movie in a very long time.
Yeah. Well, that's an excellent segue to my next question. Diego Luna is talking about Andor Season 2 recontextualizing Rogue One, not just in terms of K-2SO, but other characters and just kind of in the big picture, which in some ways it's not a surprise. We've been told that Andor Season 2 ends right at the beginning of Rogue One. But Jennifer, how do you feel about the idea of a movie like Rogue One being changed? Was A New Hope changed by Rogue One for you? Was the original trilogy changed by the prequels for you?
I would say no and no. But only because of my own stubbornness and my own kind of nostalgia and, love and introduction to the original trilogy. It's kind of like its own thing. And I think for me, the closest thing would be Solo. Where Solo, I was like, do I really need to see when Chewie and Han meet? It was a fantastic scene. And it really did change how I viewed Han Solo, his relationship with Lando, all these things that we've known about. And I was like, I don't need to see it. But then I saw it and I'm like, oh, actually, this does give me a whole new perspective on that character. So I really, really appreciate it. In this instance, I think Rogue One being so close in terms of release date to Andor Season 2, it is going to feel a little bit more like it's going to help not define it, but, it will change how I view Rogue One.
Yeah. And you said you haven't watched it in a long time. Are you concerned about that? Or like, no, it'd be great to have a different perspective?
No, I think it'll be good because there were some things that I wasn't 100% sure about in the movie. I went back and forth. I loved it, then I didn't like it. So, but now I think I like it again. I don't know. So maybe this will help.
Yeah. No, and I have come to really love Rogue One, even some of the things that I wasn't sure about when it first came out. But I do feel like there are some moments where it moves a little fast in some of the emotional beats. So I kind of have no problem with something informing an existing film. To me, it's not about it's changed, it's additional information and it's informed by it. And I think, A New Hope has changed for me in a million ways over the years. And I can sit down and try, and sometimes I enjoy watching it from I am watching it from the 1977 perspective. When if you asked who those aliens were in the bar, and what's their official backstory, people would be like, "What's wrong with you? It's just a insect guy. Who cares?" And if you're asking them about how long did it take to build the Death Star, who cares? From the 1977 perspective, I can watch it. I love watching it from the prequel perspective. I remember just being so enthralled with rewatching the Kenobi's hut scene with the prequel mindset. And in some ways that hut scene is with Kenobi explaining the Jedi and Vader and lightsabers is my favorite scene in A New Hope because it has changed. over time. Rogue One changed it. Han's sacrifice in The Force Awakens changes how I feel about him, turning back to help Luke. But all those changes aren't like, finally, this movie that's been terrible since 1977 has been propped up. It's just more information gives you more perspectives to choose from. And I feel like I'll always be able to watch Rogue One from a 2016 perspective. Remember what it was like then, what was on the culture's mind, its relationship with Force Awakens, all those things. So I'm looking forward to being able to watch it in a different way and add to the kinds of perspectives I can watch it from. Ken, what are your thoughts?
There are many. Look, I don't even know where to start. There's two ways to look at it, just in a general sense. Like, I understand where you're coming from, Jen, too. Like, original trilogies, just that's the experience growing up that I cannot change and don't want to change, and how I took it in, and what you're talking about too, Joseph, about I still wonder. Like, there's so many what ifs that could come out of Kenobi's conversation with Luke, and now we know. And I don't always need all the information filled in. I think at times it works, even down, you mentioned Han and Chewie. I just rewatched Solo, and God damn it, I love that movie so much. Like, Tobias giving him the DL-44 as he breaks it apart. I don't have any cynicism in my heart towards that scene. Did you need it? No. Could he have just had the blaster? Yep. Could he have? There's many ways you could have done it, but I like that scene. I like it. I like because it's about Han getting all the tools that he feels he needs to become this character in his own mind. But in terms of like Rogue One, I've mentioned before, and I try to be careful with it. Like, I love A New Hope. Grew up on A New Hope. It was, after a while, my least favorite of the first three, so I stopped watching it for a while. Meaning, yeah, I got it, right? I want to go. I want to see I like speeder bikes. I like what goes on at Empire. And New Hope was the one I kind of had. I didn't put on as much anymore. And Rogue One comes along, and I want to race into that. I wanted the supercuts of the end of Rogue One and the beginning of New Hope. I wanted that in a way I hadn't watched. I also had that feeling after Revenge of the Sith, which was, even during that time period where I was trying to process what I truly felt about those films. I remember sometimes watching the end of Revenge of the Sith and putting on A New Hope, which for a while was not something I did. So I like it, and I like when we get more of the story and it adds to it. You're taking me back to 2016, where there was a lot of conversation around Rebel Rising, Catalyst, but in particular Catalyst, where a lot of people were like, "Oh, you've got to read the book," and that became this thing against Rogue One or against anything about the film or TV show shouldn't require you to read supplemental material. And by the way, I really agree with that. And I do agree with some of the conversations of, well, I didn't want to read. What is it? Catalyst? I don't have time for that. I felt I knew a little bit more going into Rogue One than others. And maybe that's a very valid criticism to Rogue One. I agree with you. You said it, Joseph, something we've discussed here over the years. I thought Rogue One had a bit of a second act problem. I thought we didn't get enough time. I remember saying, I loved it. I loved the film. I would have liked one more mission with the team, right? Just to feel their connection. And I think you could point to a lot of behind-the-scenes things, why that didn't happen. I don't know. Don't care nearly 10 years on. But I do like that we're going to get a series that's going to really connect dots. Not with everyone. We're clearly not getting Jin, Baze, and Chirrut, who are two great characters. But we're getting the Rebel Alliance and more connections. And I think it's going to not even recontextualize. It's just going to add to it in a way that I think will be fun to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. I really agree with that. And who knows? Maybe we'll get surprised Chirrut and Baze. I don't think so, but yeah, it'd be great to feel like we know the characters even more as we rewatch Rogue One. Speaking of which, Diego Luna also said in this interview, I'm sure someone from Lucasfilm and Disney will give us the opportunity to watch season 2 and then go straight to watch the film on a big screen with tons of popcorn and friends around. Now, to be clear, I think he's just riffing in an interview. But Ken, how would you feel about a Rogue One re-release in theater tied to Andor season 2?
I would absolutely love it. What a flashback. What a flashback to the ride. Jen, you mentioned it. I've said before, but it's been so long now. But like, I went from that's the greatest thing I ever saw to I absolutely did not like it to I found where I actually feel the film. That was 3 viewings in 1 week. That was the roller coaster. So I would love to kind of relive that of just seeing it on the big screen because, I always said the last 30 minutes of Rogue One are some of the best Star Wars ever. Star Wars, and I just remember going, I saw 2 Imperial Star Destroyers be smushed into each other. Did I just see that? That was part of my joy in 2016. So to relive that on a big screen, I'm there. I'll buy the popcorn bucket they release.
There seems to be an escalating war in weird popcorn buckets. So,
Yes.
any selections from Rogue One?
What would it? Oh, you know what I want? It's be boring, but I would want the shield ship, the shield generator, just the big. And if you reach in at the wrong time, your hand will be you'll be like the X-wing pilot that crashed into it trying to get the popcorn.
Yeah. I want a popcorn bucket that is Bistan's open screaming mouth as he fires his big laser. You have to reach in and grab from Bistan's mouth. Bistan. Jennifer, how would you feel about a Rogue One re-release, and what kind of weird popcorn bucket do you want to put your hand in?
I reread this quote a few times because I'm like, what is his intonation? Is he like, I'm sure someone from Lucasfilm and Disney will give us, or is it more like, yeah, I'm sure someone will, from Lucasfilm and Disney will give us opportunity. I don't know, but it is an interesting tease potentially, and I could see this happening at the LCAP where they do a marathon, right, for the premiere of season 2. I think it'd be a big way to kick off Andor, considering I feel like it was a really big critical success, but it's not like a blockbuster per se, like The Mandalorian was and is. So I would be pretty gutsy to do that. I like it. I think it'd be great for you all to go do it, and I'll live vicariously on social media because I won't be able to go. But boy, that would be so much fun. In terms of popcorn buckets, I do love Bistan. I forgot how much I loved that character.
You're taking me back, Joseph. I only hear Jennifer Landa from 2016 going, Bistan! Jen, you can never stop that. You can never stop that.
So good. So many Radis, Bistan, Krennic. They're just like endless. Saw's beautiful weirdness. You're gonna kill me. So many great moments and beats. And I would love to re-experience Rogue One in a theater with audiences. I think even at the beginning of Andor season 2, or to coincide with the conclusion, to put it back into theaters. I think it's something that theaters have been having good luck with re-releases. I think it's it would be interesting to say, hey, by 2025, this film is 9 years old, and it's a newer classic, but it's also old enough now to be, it's a classic. I would love to experience it, not just with the Andor season 2 knowledge, but to experience it with audiences again and in a different time, because obviously some people had some issues with Force Awakens, but in general, that was kind of this big return. And then Rogue One was like, okay, let's see how this Star Wars every year in December is going to go. It was a time of a lot of conflict and trauma in the nation. And then everyone was real happy and loved it, but it was a different thing now to be like, I would love to see it in a theater full of people seeing the beloved classic, and to sit with 19-year-olds who's like, I saw this when I was 10 and it scarred me when all the characters died. But now I get to see it again. So just experiencing it in a different context with a live audience would be fantastic for me.
Well, the Phantom Menace experience we had at El Cap, where like Watto comes on and gets a standing ovation. Just like you could only experience this 25 years later. You could only experience it 25 years later. Fan
favorite Watto. It was amazing. And I think Lucasfilm can take this. I think that they should re-release it, and I think they should advertise it with the way that I think of Rogue One, and we've talked about. Come see it in the theater. The safest Star Wars film to bring up at a party. Yes. I've never met anyone who hates Rogue One and wants to rant at you about it. I've met people be like, parts of it didn't work for me. I've never, and I'm sure they're out there, I'm not asking to meet them, but I've never met anyone who's like got nerd rage about Rogue One. It's always that we can agree on that one. And I would love to have that experience again in the theater. All right, we are going to wrap up with one last interview quote. This is about the Mandalorian and Grogu. It comes to us from Katie Sackhoff, who was interviewed by comicbook.com while promoting the animated adaptation of Watchmen, where she plays the character Silk Spectre. Katie Sackhoff was asked if she was going to appear as Bo-Katan in the film The Mandalorian and Grogu, and she had this very succinct response. Number one, if I knew, I wouldn't tell you. And if I did tell you, they'd probably kill me. So, Ken, should all actors adopt this as a standard response to a question they can't answer? Is this the new no comment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in a way it has become that in a sense, right? Of well, Disney's watching, Uncle Bob's watching, and yeah, it's a dance, man, right? I know the questions have to be asked because if you do get some kind of reveal, that's going viral. That's going to help your career, and I don't mean that in a cynical clickbait way. Like if you're an entertainment journalist, this is the kind of stuff you want. We've seen it. We have friends that get this stuff going. Ash, Maud, all those kind of folks. So I think the question should be asked, but it's like we know what the answer is going to be. So do it in the way Katie would do it, which is I'd be dead.
Jennifer, how do you feel about this response?
Ken, you just made me think about why I always struggled as an entertainment reporter. You have to ask the question, even though you know what the answer is going to be. And I would always be like, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. That makes for a bad reporter, bad journalist. But I love Katie Sackhoff, and I love that she had that answer. Like you're saying, this is just understood. They're going to ask. This is a great response. Don't even engage, because if you give them a little bit, they're just going to keep asking, and the whole interview will be dominated by that. So this is a way that all these actors should do it, so that they don't unintentionally like spoil something. I don't know, by trying to be coy, right? Because we've seen that before.
Yeah, no, I think this is just such a great twist on there's the trying to be coy and nobody says no comment anymore because everybody takes that as a yes. So it has shifted to straight faced lying, which I don't know if I understand why actors need to do it because they're left with no other option. But there is something that just doesn't sit with me of like, do we really want that to be a part of the profession? Like that used to be a joke that's what acting is. It's lying. Like, no. So I have to add that to your resume of like, this is one of the things you have to practice on. Like, how good are you about lying that you're in a movie? There's something about it that doesn't sit right with me. I was really entertained with this very forceful, like, I can't answer that in any way. Come on. So I thought that was great. Ken, here's my final question. How do you feel about Bo-Katan appearing in the film or not?
I do think there's a place for her in the film, though I do think this is very much about reframing Mandalorian and Grogu at the center of their own adventures. And season 3 of Mandalorian obviously moved off of just one Mandalorian to Katie Sackhoff's Bo-Katan even being kind of the Mandalorian, according to Rick Famuyiwa, right? So there's a big place for her in Filoni's New Republic film, right? That's where I think she, I'll say, quote unquote, belongs more than this film. But because we're not getting a season 4, as far as we know at this point in time, I don't need threads solved or picked up. But I don't know. It just seems like there'd be a place for her at some point. But I do like what I think is the point of the film now, which is being like, hey, this is the adventure of these two characters at this time going around trying to help the fledgling New Republic. So I like that.
Yeah, I really agree with all that. I think Bo-Katan in charge of a fully resurgent Mandalore by the time of the Thrawn conflict in Filoni's film makes a lot of sense to me. So I would hope that she shows up there. I think for this film, we had kind of some conflicting reports early on about whether or not there's going to be a further season of Mandalorian Grogu, or if this is the sort of the wrap up of their story. This is the end of their story. I think if it's the end of their story, it really makes sense for Bo-Katan to appear. If the film is dealing at all with this idea of does Grogu attain the experience and the wisdom he needs to return to Mandalore and fully be a part of the clan, I could see her even being in a small role of like, this is the nice Star Wars film where there's a celebration on some steps and Grogu gets raised in the air instead of a peace orb. And Bo-Katan is one of the smiling faces. I could absolutely see that. So I want her in this story if it makes sense. Jennifer, how do you feel about it?
I want her to have a big screen moment. That would be really great. I love Katie Sackhoff. I will watch whatever she does, however small the part is. I will be thrilled. I was wondering if there was going to be another season of The Mandalorian. I was like, wait, I thought that there was. But no, you're right. You're right. We haven't gotten that, right? They're not doing it.
To this point, to this point.
Yeah, I think Favreau said in some interview at one point of like, yeah, we'll probably do more seasons. I don't think there is a decision yet. I think Favreau maybe spoke early. That's my total reading of the tea leaves. Just my opinion. Take.
That makes sense. Maybe not
Yeah.
to just
So
wrap
who
it on the
knows?
big screen.
Yeah, but it'd be great to see Bo-Katan From the animated small screen to the live action big screen. What a journey. All right, that is it. Ken, you want to take us home?
I do. Hey, we're ForceCenter. You can find us on social media at ForceCenter Pod. Facebook page is ForceCenter Podcast. We're on Instagram, YouTube as well. Like we said, subscribe here. We are available as a podcast in a lot of spots. Just search. You'll find us. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. And you can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. If you'd like, follow me at Ken Napzok. My website, kennapzok.com, currently does not have the information for Friday's show. Oh, gosh, I got to update that. Anyways, I'll be in San Francisco this Friday night. One night only. Mark Ellis, me, Nick Scarpino, and Josh McCouga up at the Lost Church in San Francisco. You can go to markellis.live for information right now on that. Jen, where can they find and follow you?
It's going to be so fun. You can find me on all the social media sites at Jennifer Landa or TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138 and join me for my miniature adventures in Doll Land.
A Blythe fluencer. Makes me think of the city of Blythe on the Arizona-California border, which is desolate wasteland at times. But I like that you've got the love of the dolls here. Joseph, you're still the birthday boy.
Yes.
So where can they find you?
Well, it's a delight to not have to plug the show anymore because by the end there, my finger was twitching from hitting the refresh button. Thank you to everyone who bought tickets for the actual show and for the live stream. But if you want to stay caught up with things I'm working on, particularly some news will be coming out about very short films that I'm going to be able to release publicly and that big feature film that I'm working on. And hey, maybe I'll do another show. If you want to stay caught up with me, you can follow me on all the social media at Joseph Scrimshaw. You can go to my website, josephscrimshaw.com, or in particular, a thing I'd love for you to do is sign up for my weekly blog letter called Finish Your Monsters, where I'm really detailing what I'm up to each week in terms of creative and life adventures. So links to that on my website, josephscrimshaw.com as well. That is it. I think we are all off to Google more Blythe dolls and see if any of our souls get possessed. So if you want to join us, feel free to do that. This has been breaking news from a long time.